Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for webinar Supercharging your PHP pages with Mod LSAPI in CloudLinux OS. In this webinar, our CloudLinux own Bogdan Shishka will go over this new product-ready feature and explain how it works and why it is so powerful. Bogdan is CloudLinux top-tier technical support engineer. He's an expert in Linux and has been working in the industry since 2003. Bogdan, please go ahead.
Hi all, my name is Bogdan and I am going to describe what is Mod LSAPI, why it is good, how it works, and how to tune it up. Recently, we released Mod LSAPI to production. After a year of testing, we are positive it is doing a great job now. Presentation will last 25 minutes, then we will take your questions at the end. Let's start. Why Mod LSAPI was needed? Existing PHP handlers and mods are slow, unsafe, or uncomfortable in use. SuPHP is slow, as every new request requires forking new thread. Mod PHP is insecure and requires npm prefork mod. It works as Apache user and requires RUID2 module to switch to user permissions. Mod FCGI is fast, but usually unstable, or require hard tuning depending on server specifications. It has suboptimal caching, but does not support htaccess rules. It is hard to do multi-versions per user. FPM has suboptimal security due to the way sockets used. It does not support htaccess rules, and it is hard to implement multi-versions. It requires separate config to make a pull per customer, and it has suboptimal memory usage. Why Mod LSAPI was engaged? It is blazing fast. It outperforms any other Apache PHP handler. It fully supports opcode caching. It does not require any tuning and is easy to install. It supports Mod PHP options for mod in virtual hosts. It supports htaccess PHP directives, so regular users who are familiar with them can easily use them, or use Google to find needed directives. It fully supports KGFS and PHP Selector, including possibility to use multiple PHP per single user, even PHP versions per directory inside single domain. It is secure as based on CUExec mechanism. It has potential for even better performance for high-load sites. Mod LSAPI fully supports popular opcode caches like APC, Xcache, or ZendOpCache. Opcode cache is a tool that is keeping PHP pages in memory, so PHP processor do not need to read and compile PHP code from scratch. Opcache uses shared memory and shared code across requests for individual user. Mod LSAPI is configured not to reset cache on Apache restart, something impossible to do with Mod PHP. LSPHP is a build of PHP sources with LSAPI provided by Lightspeed technology. Lightspeed Server Application Programming Interface is designed specifically for seamless optimized communication between Lightspeed Web Server and third-party web applications. Now this protocol is available for Apache. Using LSAPI, we have seen greater performance than Apache with Mod PHP, more easy installation and configuration than PHP FPM, and easy integration with control panels. Here is a scheme which describes how it works. Mod LSAPI is like a front-end. LSPHP process is a backend. Apache accepts requests from visitor and pass handling PHP request to Mod LSAPI, a regular Apache module. Mod LSAPI uses liblsAPI to transfer request to LSPHP daemon. LSPHP starter check if LSPHP process for needed user exists. If no, it start one. If process exists, it will use it. LSPHP receive request, process it, and returns date to Mod LSAPI. Each user has own LSPHP process in separate KGFS and LVE. If there are no requests to this LSPHP process, it is terminated. By default, timeout is set to 30 seconds, but it could be configured with LSPHP config file. Installation process contains few steps and is different depending on control panel used. First, we install common lib LSAPI packages. Next, we install Mod LSAPI itself. We have to prepare an environment using switch Mod LSAPI utility. It creates directories with proper permissions and make native LSPHP as PHP 5.6. For cPanel with Easy Apache 3, we detect native PHP version and build correct LSPHP binary file. Then we enable Mod LSAPI globally and restart Apache. Some additional steps are needed for Easy Apache 4, as it is still in beta stage. We have made conversion script for it to do the job. What you have to do is just to download the script, pass Mod LSAPI parameter to it, and then continue with the same steps as for Easy Apache 3. DirectAdmin installation is totally different due to custom build tool used. DirectAdmin company takes our sources, build needed packages, and place to their locations. You do not need to install packages with Yum. Just use custom build like update, set LSPHP as target PHP release, build PHP, and build Apache. Due to the nature they takes our packages, there could be a small delay between our release and DirectAdmin update with custom build. It is not trivial to install Mod LSAPI for ISP Manager. It is quite similar for non-panel RPM-based install. The main goal is to disable initial PHP support provided by ISP Manager. First steps are same: install packages and prepare environment. Next, we modify Mod LSAPI conf file to load LSAPI module. Then disable support for needed domain or for all virtual hosts. On command add type LSPHP string in Mod LSAPI conf file, then restart Apache. For more easy Mod LSAPI installation, we developed an utility switch Mod LSAPI. It has a lot of options, and this table shows what are supported by different control panels. cPanel is leading here, supporting all of them. Most panels support install and uninstall only. LSPHP binary usually is absent on the servers without Lightspeed or without alternate PHP, but it is needed for proper LSAPI functionality. When switch Mod LSAPI setup script is run, it checks if LSPHP binary exists. If not, it simply copies LSPHP binary from alt PHP 5.6 package. It is recommended to run switch Mod LSAPI build native LSPHP on servers with cPanel and Easy Apache 3, as it detects currently used version, takes needed config options, and patches for modules, and then build LSPHP binary. DirectAdmin has own native LSPHP builder, handled by custom build. Mod LSAPI is a drop replacement for SuPHP. It fully supports all directives and will not cause any issues when you switch SuPHP to LSAPI. A recommended and totally safe procedure setting up LSPHP on cPanel servers is following: install and configure Mod LSAPI. Enable Mod LSAPI for single domain with switch Mod LSAPI utility. Open this website in browser and browse it. Be sure it works properly. Then switch PHP engine to Mod LSAPI globally using same tool. All Mod LSAPI configuration options are placed in single config file. That file will not be changed by any package reinstalls, Easy Apache builds on cPanel or custom builds on DirectAdmin. It is safe to modify it according to your needs. The location is pretty standard to main config files on panels. For cPanel with Easy Apache 3, it is usr local apache conf.d. For cPanel with Easy Apache 4, it is etc apache2 conf.d. For DirectAdmin, it is etc httpd conf extra. For RPM-based installs, same as other panels, it is etc httpd conf.d. Mod LSAPI errors are located in regular Apache error log file and in his own SuLSPHP log. Errors from client, like PHP notice, code errors, are written to error log file. Depending on server configuration, this can be single error log in Apache logs directory or individual error logs per customer. Errors from PHP starter are written to SuLSPHP log file. They are related to running LSPHP as service and are mostly helpful when you are getting errors method in browser. Mod LSAPI allows to use different handlers for different PHP versions. For example, file with extension PHP 5.3 can be handled by PHP version 5.3, and file with extension .php will be handled by PHP 5.5. This is done setting handlers and PHP binaries for them in etc container PHP handler file. For example, let's create two applications for LSPHP 5.3 and 5.5 and restart Apache. Now, with htaccess file, we can point which PHP is to use depending on extension. In this example, index PHP 5.3 will be processed by PHP 5.3 version, while index PHP will be processed by native PHP. Even more on this, you may use this functionality for PHP per directory if used website engine depends on different PHP versions. Here is example Mod LSAPI configuration file, if LSAPI has been enabled globally. Most of PHP file extensions are covered by Add Type option. If you want to use additional handlers for existing extensions, you should remove conflicting extensions from this main LSAPI config file. Here are most useful Mod LSAPI directives that allow you to tune it up. LSAPI backend children is the maximum number of simultaneously running child backend processes, same as how many requests LSPHP could process at once. LSAPI backend PGRP max idle is how long a control backend process will wait for new requests before it exits. You may want to decrease it to minimize memory usage, or increase to make faster websites response time. LSAPI backend max process time is the maximum time allowed when processing a request. LSAPI backend max idle is how long a backend child process will wait for new requests. They can stay alive without parent process and has own idle time. LSAPI backend max request is how many requests each child process will handle before it exits. Most common questions about Mod LSAPI. Is it compatible with Easy Apache 3 and 4? Yes, it is. Both Easy Apache version works properly with Mod LSAPI. Is it compatible with PHP directives in htaccess file? Yes, Mod LSAPI can read PHP and phpAdmin directives. It fully supports htaccess directives. I have httpdconf with suexec user group option. Do I need to add Mod LSAPI options to virtual hosts? You do not need to change anything. Mod LSAPI can read SuPHP user group, as well RUID GID, also suexec user group, or assign user ID parameters to determine user ID under which sites are running. How to install Mod LSAPI on Plesk? As of today, Plesk installation means manual processing like for ISP Manager. However, we are working with Plesk developers to provide more easy integration. Can Mod LSAPI work without KGFS? Yes, it works without KGFS, just alternate PHP is needed. How many servers are running Mod LSAPI now? It is hard to be sure, however, there were almost 2,000 LSAPI installs under CloudLinux 5, 6, and 7. Now a bit more about future improvements. Mod LSAPI will try to use persistent connections to backend process, which will significantly increase module performance. For better security, Mod LSAPI will use random named LSPHP sockets. Will be added notification mechanism for detection if LSPHP was started. Will be added crew support to speed up LSPHP startup time. Uninstall process depends from control panel used. For cPanel, it is single command line to switch Mod LSAPI utility. On DirectAdmin server, you have to choose other type of PHP handler with custom build utility, then rebuild PHP and Apache. On RPM-based install, you will have to erase Mod LSAPI package and restore original PHP handler with Apache configs. We have done a bunch of performance tests to compare Mod LSAPI with most popular PHP setups. We were testing simple and complex PHP scripts, including environment effects like fork, connect, poll, which can affect response time. As well, precisely tested WordPress-based sites. Without using opcache, almost all engines show the same results. They are green on a chart. With opcache, we see significant improvements using LSAPI. Almost same results when mod RUID2 used. PHP FPM goes third, but if we are talking about setting it up and configuring per user, it will lose a lot of points. Widely used SuPHP do not support opcache, so it goes last. Mod LSAPI is 14 times better than SuPHP. Thank you for watching. Now it's time for questions, which you can ask using a form in GoToWebinar software.
Thank you very much, Bogdan. I will start with questions. I'll go over the questions that I answered before using the webinar software, but I'll do them in voice. So the first question we have got was, will we give this presentation slides? Can you see it? And yes, we will make available the slides, we will make available the video. A few days after presentation, it should be possible. It should be available. So the next question was about Mod LSAPI being 100% compatible with CloudLinux 6 and CloudLinux 7, and if CloudLinux 7 performs better, it is 100% compatible with both, and there is no performance differences between CloudLinux 6 and CloudLinux 7. Does cPanel have plans to mainstream Mod LSAPI? I cannot talk for cPanel, but if you have CloudLinux with cPanel, it is available with cPanel. It is part of Easy Apache 3 and Easy Apache 4, so there is no extra things that you have to do when you are setting it up. Next question was about htaccess, and is it required instead of PHP ini? And no, that's not the case. It's not required. You can use either htaccess or PHP ini or both. It's actually a drop-in replacement for SuPHP. Does it support Optimum Cache? Yes, of course, they're independent of each other, but they will work perfectly together. Will it work with combination of Nginx and Apache? Yes, it will. So because Apache is still used to handle PHP requests, it will work. Is LSAPI only available from our beta testing repository? Not any longer. We now make it available from stable channels, so you can just install it from stable channels. You don't have to install it from beta repository. How the permissions needs to be set up? Any changes needed to be made, or if already using SuPHP, is it the same? No changes are needed. It's a drop-in replacement for SuPHP. Can I act like a SuPHP when customer uses custom PHP ini and PHP runs as a customer username in cPanel? Yes, that's exactly how it runs. It basically expects files to be owned by user, etc. Is Mod LSAPI and CL mostly suggested for shared hosting? Do you see any advantages in one dedicated server for only one user? So Mod LSAPI significantly outperforms SuPHP, and it makes sense even for one site. You'll get much faster site. The response time will be much better. If you are using PHP FPM, you might not see a significant difference at all. But as long as we're talking about SuPHP, yes, you will definitely win with Mod LSAPI. We set up today and I found it would not work until I uncomment add handler and add type lines in LSAPI config. Is it normal as I did not see it in the documentation? So yes, it is actually normal. And so once you install, we don't switch sites yet. You actually have to run command switch Mod LSAPI enable global or enable particular site, and that is part of the documentation. Okay, that's the questions that I already answered. Let me see the other questions. So the next question, is it possible to block individual PHP ini files under document root folder like on FastCGI and use PHP ini, which is configured under KG5 selector only? So yes, by default, we're using PHP ini that is given by PHP selector, and you can block any other PHP ini by using LSAPI PHP RC configuration settings. Does it support .user.ini in public HTML? So it actually doesn't support it. It's one of the features we still hasn't added. So if your customers use .user.ini, it's a problem. They would most likely need to switch those to htaccess file or to regular ini files. We do plan to enable it in the future, but for now it's only supports PHP RC mode. Is there any procedure suggested? I mean, CL, cPanel, Mod LSAPI, different PHP versions. If you mean the order of installation, it really doesn't matter. You can install cPanel at any CloudLinux at any moment. You can install cPanel after CloudLinux, but it has to be fresh install. If you're installing CloudLinux after cPanel, it doesn't have to be fresh install. You can do it with customers already in. You can deploy Mod LSAPI at any moment. You can deploy multiple PHP at any moment. Once again, the timing when you deploy one or the other is completely irrelevant. You can do Mod LSAPI first. You can do multiple PHP version first. You can do it with existing customers. It should still continue to work. Next question, where can I get the PowerPoint presentation? So we will make the presentation available through email to all registered users, and we will post it on our CloudLinux website. How to configure OpCache functionality on shared hosting servers? Well, if you enable it using PHP selector, it will just work. We did the settings there by default that are quite optimal for shared hosting. The main difference with opcaching and shared hosting is that you have to give less memory than you would give otherwise to a regular user, because you have so many of those users. If we enable global, it seems we still need to figure out a way to get opcache enabled for as many customers as possible to take advantage of the speed. Any suggestion for how to do this? If you use PHP selector, there is a command to do it for all your customers, or more like there is a way to script it so that it is enabled for all your customers. The best way to get this command is just to contact our support department. I'm sorry, I was given a comment to a previous question of where to get the PowerPoint presentation. The presentation will be available from slideshare.net/CloudLinux. Contact support, they'll give you all the information on how to enable opcaching from command line, and then you can run it for each user. I mean, if you just enable Mod LSAPI, you right away get about 0.1 second performance improvement, and you will have less load on your server, which can give you additional performance improvement even without opcaching. Of course, if you enable opcaching for your customers, it will give you even more benefits. How does Mod LSAPI different from having full-fledged Lightspeed web server? I'm a fan of Lightspeed web server. It was one of the reasons we selected Mod LSAPI, because we really believe in their technology. We were monitoring their success for years, but we saw that quite a few of our customers are not planning to switch to Lightspeed web server. And we needed some decent way for our customers, even though those that don't switch to Lightspeed web server to handle PHP, and that's why we went with Mod LSAPI, which is basically a Lightspeed technology to serve PHP adopted for Apache. Lightspeed would still outperform Apache. It's just for serving static pages, just for accepting requests, it's much better. So you can fully expect Lightspeed web server still be faster than Apache with Mod LSAPI. I've lost you in the last diagram, so you recommend running Mod LSAPI with or without opcache. Of course, we recommend running opcaching. If you were using SuPHP before, opcaching was pretty much irrelevant. It wouldn't give you much speed up because it's a new process all the time. But with Mod LSAPI, you no longer have this problem, so you'll save a lot of CPU resources just by enabling Mod LSAPI and opcode caching. Any conflicting issues with Nginx. You cannot run Mod LSAPI with Nginx directly because it's simply a module for Apache, it's not a module for Nginx. But if you run a combination of Nginx plus Apache, where Apache handles the PHP request, then yes, you could use Mod LSAPI and there should be no issues whatsoever. Will be supported with cPanel 12.5. Yes, even now, if you use Flask with CloudLinux, you can enable Lightspeed Mod LSAPI. Is it possible to disable possibility to use htaccess, PHP, htaccess directives? Yes, there is a Mod LSAPI directive that disables Mod LSAPI from reading those directives in htaccess. And we did it specifically for compatibility reasons. Was it done in conjunction with Lightspeed, or did you just take this from open source release? So before doing this project, we talked to Lightspeed. We do have good relationship with them. We talked to them. They gave us their blessing. We took their open source code. We adopted it for Apache. We did our own Apache module, so they provide the library, we provide the Apache module. We do share updates, so if we find some bugs, we do contact them, we send them patch sets, or we work together on patch sets. Of course, they know this technology much better, so quite often, if we send them the patch set, they'll have the error, they'll have the fix for it in a matter of hours, but it would take a bit longer for our engineers to solve it. But it is a collaborative project in some form. Majority of work of porting it for Apache is done by us, but we do work directly with Lightspeed on the LSAPI. Can you switch directly from Mod PHP setup where PHP runs as nobody to Mod LSAPI without first switching to a SuPHP or Mod ROID2? You know what? I'll go back to this question in a few minutes. I want to get some help from developers on that. There is not many people still running Mod PHP, so I don't know if there is any other steps that need to be done. I know that we did it as a drop-in replacement, but I'm not so sure about file ownership, directory ownerships, because it will be running as a user, so you might need to switch files to be owned by user as well. Well, I'm actually getting feedback from my guys that Mod LSAPI can work in the nobody mode, but you're losing KGFS functionality with it. So yes, you can switch directly from Mod PHP to Mod LSAPI as nobody, running PHP as nobody without KGFS. If you want KGFS, you should switch to, well, actually, and if you're running it as nobody, it's going to be security nightmare in my honest opinion. But if you want to switch from Mod PHP to Mod LSAPI, what you should do, you should also change ownership of the files, etc. And it's better to do it together with our support. So contact our support, we will help you switching. And most likely you can do it for individual users, so you can test the switching for 1-2 users before switching it for everyone else. Is Mod LSAPI now considered out of beta? Yes, it is stable production. We released it to production about a week ago, I believe, and it has been running on more than 10% of all our servers, of all Cloud Linux servers. Can you confirm the setup process, or is there a web page with the info available? I'll ask people to send me a link to that and post it here as well. Is this the same thing as Lightspeed LSAPI, or did you guys write yourself or some license agreement? It is the same thing as LSAPI. LSAPI is open sourced, so we use that open source license, and it is handled by the same open source staff. What we did write from scratch is Apache module that communicates to the LSAPI, so that requests that come to Apache is actually served by LSAPI. If already using beta version, do I need to make changes to switch to production version? No changes are needed. Anytime you do yum update, it will get the latest version from production. So if you're on some outdated beta version, just do yum update, you'll get the one from production. If I use global, is there any way to change the handler back to SuPHP for a single account? From what I remember, no. Once you do global, you can no longer switch back, but I will ask my guys to follow up on that and see. I have quite a few more questions going. Actually, I'm getting the answer for this global. Even if you use global, you can still switch to a SuPHP for individual account, or you can switch to pretty much any other handler by simply adding PHP handler to for a SuPHP in .htaccess file for that user. If you don't know how to do it yourself, contact our support, we will help you, but it's pretty easy, and I'll post it as a reply to this question. How does it compare to Nginx FPM? I would say that Nginx FPM would be as fast or might outperform Apache in event mode with Mod LSAPI. Most likely it would outperform on static pages, but it will underperform under PHP pages. But what you're losing with Nginx and FPM is some of the security. As I said that as we said before, FPM has known security issues with the way it handles sockets on a shared environment. It's not fully secured. You're missing ability to switch from version to version. It's very difficult to do with Nginx FPM. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe someone has a way to do it, but it's much harder than what we have. But otherwise you should have similar performance, and especially if you have a single site, Nginx FPM, it makes perfect sense. One answer was, even for single customer, Mod LSAPI will perform anything. Well, anything, we mean it will outperform. Does it mean that it would outperform PHP's Apache module as well? Well, actually, yes, it will, because when you use PHP with Apache module, you're forced to use Apache prefork, which is extremely slow. So you can use Mod LSAPI with Apache event, and you will get overall better site performance that you will get with Apache and Mod PHP. I cannot find Mod LSAPI in Easy Apache 3. Do I need to enable it somehow? Basically, you have to install LibLSAPI component, and then it would be enabled. Just go to our docs for Mod LSAPI, well, docs.cloudlinux.com, go to LSAPI's part, and it will have instructions on how to deploy it on cPanel. Does the optimum cache make any difference if using with Mod LSAPI and Zend op cache? Those two are independent of each other. It's more depends on how many sites you have duplicate on your server than on anything else. So if you do have, you'll get some additional benefit from optimum cache. Okay, I'm getting the question if we can update the documentation to include all the packages that needs to be installed. I'll ask my guys to do that, and we will of course do it. Can we create multiple PHP ini in multiple directories, and Mod LSAPI will read PHP inis or only main directory PHP ini? From what I remember, it should be able to read multiple PHP ini files, but once again, I will try to get a confirmation for that as well. Do we recommend disabling PHP FPM and only enabling Mod LSAPI on a cPanel server? Basically, yes. We believe that Mod LSAPI will give you better security, better flexibility, and better performance. So the biggest performance boost is if you have opcache installed. If not, there is no advantage over SuPHP. There is an advantage anyway, simply because we don't have to bring up PHP interpreter and load all the PHP modules all the time. So we have to fork instead of start a new process each time, as SU exec does. And I mean, you can test it. We've seen fairly significant benefit right away in terms of with the SuPHP, the startup would take about 6 milliseconds to 17 milliseconds, while with SuPHP would take 100 milliseconds to start up. Okay, there is 2 more duplicate questions about if they made it in conjunction with Lightspeed, and that's a yes. Is Mod LSAPI considered production ready? Do you have a feedback from customers with large install base? It is a production ready. We have a feedback from large customers. It is installed on 10% of all CloudLinux servers, and that means it's on more than 3,000 servers already being used in production. So interesting answer I get. I actually didn't know that. So the question was, can we create multiple PHP in multiple directories, and Mod LSAPI will read all PHP or only main directory PHP? So it's actually using PHP RC functionality, which is set in virtualhost or httpd.conf, and as such, we don't scan inside the directories. We could scan inside the directories, but there is some unresolved security issues with that. We actually got it from cPanel security team, that there is some things that would allow nasty stuff to be done, and we are working, or we will be working to fix it and make it more flexible. It's going to be optional in the future, but for now it has to be in the main directory. Should the Mod LSAPI be showing up in the PHP handler under configure suexec PHP VHM easy Apache? Actually, to be honest, I don't know. Probably not in easy Apache 3, because it's not going to be default way in a very near future, but in easy Apache 4, yes, it should, and if it's not, we will change it. What about file and directory permission requirements comparing with the SuPHP? Where do we configure that? So it should be the same permission requirements as with SuPHP. So it should be owned by user, etc., etc. And I would say that running 777 of PHP files, even within KGFS, is not safe. It's safer in KGFS, but in no way or form it is ever safe to have 777 files on your system. Do I need to install Mod LSAPI if I install Lightspeed? No, if you have Lightspeed web server, you don't need Mod LSAPI. Also, if I have Apache and Mod LSAPI now and I upgrade to Lightspeed, do I need to uninstall Mod LSAPI? No, you don't have to uninstall it. You don't need it anymore, but you don't have to uninstall it. Is it possible to limit opcache memory usage per user, not globally? So even so, yes, opcache memory usage is per user when you're using Mod LSAPI. So whatever you have in your PHP ini settings, it is per user, not globally. And of course, you can have individual PHP ini files per user where you set the setting differently for each user. Will you be working on a GUI like KGFS for easy admin on this mod? That's a good question. We haven't thought about it, but yes, we will definitely have a way to set all those options from the web interface. Does LSAPI work on CloudLinux 5? Yes, it does. How to run .html as .php with Mod LSAPI? The rule is the same as for SuPHP. Yes, it's exactly the same. You just define a handler. How many people registered for this webinar? I think about 200 people registered. Is it available for the final client to enable or disable it? So right now, you can define in that htaccess file the handler to use. So you can define the SuPHP handler or Mod LSAPI handler, and by that, end customer or administrator on behalf of the end customer can always switch it. I hope this is a replay. I just managed to do it. So we will provide a video recording in a few days, and you should get it in the mail that will have the whole webinar recorded. In cPanel PHP 5 handler, which should I choose? Currently I have FCGI. Is it found? No, if you have FCGI, you are using fast CGI. If you want Mod LSAPI, you will need to switch. We do have on docs.cloudlinux.com section for Lightspeed. You can find information there, or just contact our support. They'll be more than happy to respond with exact details on how to switch. Is it needed for Mod LSAPI to be added in Easy Apache as a custom module to be saved and built? No, it's not. Just follow our instructions. That's all you have to do. And we have all the hooks needed by Easy Apache to automatically recompile, update, and do whatever is needed, so it always works. For your information, I already tried that set handler option in htaccess. It didn't work. All PHP files downloaded in a browser instead of PHP files being executed. Well, very simple. If you get that, contact our support. We will help you. Could you update the documentation to help installing Mod LSAPI plus opcode caching and shared environment? I think it's a really good idea. We will provide maybe knowledge base article on the topic that covers how to do that particular thing. I just getting mentioned that Planet Hoster is using Mod LSAPI for 3 months and it's working fine for them. It's basically to the question, does any large hosters use it? Here's one. Do we have virtual mean support? We don't have web interface, but otherwise we do have people using CloudLinux with virtual mean, and Mod LSAPI will work there as well. How can I test to see if LSAPI is actually running and working other than looking in the Apache log? So if you set up PHP info page, like standard empty PHP page with PHP info inside, and look at the handler, you will see that it is handled by LSAPI. And this way you'll know that it is handled by LSAPI and not as SuPHP or FastCGI. Actually, the message you should get, what you should see is that is handled by Lightspeed's version 6.8. That's the handler that you should see as server API. I'm sending it so you can see exactly how it shows up. This is the first webinar I can recall you guys hosting. Could have been mail filtering. Are you planning to now in the future to be hosting webinars to cover specific aspects of CloudLinux in the future? So we did webinars before, must be mail filtering, but we now have a focused effort of having webinars every 4 to 6 weeks that are educational on CloudLinux OS and how to do stuff. We will be doing it under CloudLinux Academy title, and our hope they will be very helpful. We might set up separate mailing list just for that, but we will be announcing through our other channels: Facebook, blog post, RSS feed, Twitter, as well as our newsletter that goes basically to all our customers. Is our interconnect that we've written for Apache open source? Can it work with other platforms? No, for now we decided not to release it for open source for the specific reasons that this is a benefit for our customers, and we want it to be available to our customers only. And we want hosting companies that use CloudLinux to provide the fastest, most reliable hosting and to be above the competition from any other hosting companies. In cPanel Process Manager, you get this LSPHP. This shows it's running on your server. Yeah, that's another way that you can see that LSPHP is actually running. Can I run a PHP -i command to find instead of using PHP info? No, this will not give you anything because what you're seeing is PHP command running from command line. What you see is how Apache is executing PHP, and for that it has to be going through Apache. That's all the questions. I don't even know if I should wait for more. I think that been more questions than we ever had in any of the webinars. Thank you very much for such great questions. To be honest, this is the first time I can remember getting technical questions that I couldn't answer myself. I'm pleasantly surprised. It's good to know that on the other end, there is so many really strong technical minds who can challenge me so much and requires me to go back to drawing board and rethink quite a few things. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being our customers. I'm going to finish the webinar now. Thanks a lot.